Share your screen.
Share my screen.
Yeah, share your screen through.
Okay, great. We will go ahead and get this meeting started. This is the regularly scheduled city council meeting. It is September 7th, 2023. City Clerk Ryan Muse, will you please call roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Mayor Wusso.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dane.
Here.
Counselor Schachter.
Present.
Counselor Kaup.
Here.
Counselor Weimer.
Here.
Counselor Zelinski.
Present.
Counselor Godus.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thanks. Do we have any agenda changes or conflicts? Anyone want to pull anything off consent? Okay, then we'll go ahead and move forward into council comments, or I'm sorry, council announcements this time. Anyone have any upcoming events they want to celebrate?
I'd like to mention.
Okay. I'll do it.
So in the ongoing community outreach, we are hoping that you will take the time to fill out the zoning regulation survey. I believe you can find that on the city website. You can also come into City Hall by September 13th. There's a QR code on little signs and things that you'll see, and then you can also find it on the city website. But public input would be really valuable to making sure that we make these things successful.
Thank you, Erin. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, we will move on then to citizens appearing before council. These are for items that are not on the agenda. I do have a list started, so I will begin to call names. Please note you're going to get 3 minutes. When you come up, please let us know your name and if you're in city limits. As a reminder, we really, truly appreciate the community feedback. This is a great opportunity for us to hear concerns that are out there. If you can just help me out by keeping to your 3 minutes so I don't have to interrupt you, because I hate to interrupt people. So wrap it up and then I won't have to. First on the list is Marie, is it Zawel? Thank you. Come on up.
My name is Marie Zowell, and I do live within city limits.
Thank you.
6 months prior to purchasing our home at 519 Maple Street, my husband and I moved to Colorado from Arizona. In December of 2020, we had no idea how the homeless in this town would impact us. Not only do the homeless take over, in a sense, the area behind our home, they conduct drug deals in the back alley, visible on our cameras every night. This summer, I found a used syringe in our backyard, along with trash and personal items in our carports. Homeless men have been on our property 2 times, the fall of 2022 and July of 2023. Both times the men were intoxicated and trespassing. The first man was naked and doing something I will not mention in our front yard. The second was passed out in our backyard. Both times the same officer came, and both times he was flippant about the incidents. He responded, yeah, when I explained the behavior I've witnessed repeatedly. Drug use, drug dealing, fighting, public intoxication, public urination, screaming obscenities, throwing trash, harassment, loitering. I was shocked that both men were not arrested. I was especially shocked when the second man was not arrested for publicly urinating in front of me, my husband, and the officers. I was told that trespassing, public intoxication, and public urination were all quote unquote petty offenses. As a homeowner with a professional job as a secondary teacher, those petty offenses are not petty to me. They are serious and should be treated as such. I have a hard time accepting excuses. Our hands are tied because of liberal politicians. There's not much we can do. I hear enough excuses for my teenage students, but the adults around me who have spoken to me have even more. I have been called an effing whore, and my husband was called an effing fat ass by a homeless man. My parents have been harassed by homeless men. And my daughter was followed by a man while she was walking her dog during daylight hours. Prior to purchasing our home, it was a rental. A neighbor told me a few years ago, a drug addict walked inside and confronted a resident intending to rob him. The resident moved out due to this situation. The 2 alleys abutting our property area are a major point of contention. After asking nearly 20 people who owns those alleys, I have yet to receive a definitive answer. I'm at the point where I carry a knife in my pocket while walking on our property. If law enforcement in the city won't protect me, I will protect myself. No more excuses. If something concrete and permanent is not done about the homeless who are loitering and committing multiple illegal acts daily near my home, I will go to the media and not just the newspaper. My neighbors, area business owners, customers, and tourists do not deserve to be treated in such a contemptible manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marie, thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. I think it's an issue that we are aware of. Normally we can't have like a discourse with you, but I want you to know that we're aware of it and we really do want you to feel safe in your community. I think that you've reached out to us a few times here recently, and I'd like to think that at some point soon we will be able to meet as a group and start at least discussing it and trying to move forward with some solutions. Okay, thank you. Richard Todd.
Good evening, everyone. It's Richard Todd. I live at 616 Cowden Drive.
Okay, thank you.
A totally different subject, thank goodness. In tomorrow's Post Independent, there's an article with a picture of the cars parked in Davis Drive. And the title of it is all to do with the closing of the cul-de-sacs. I'm sure you're all aware of that. Very good reason, because when those roads were built and the houses, they weren't expecting large fire engines. I think they used things with the pump up and down, like you see in Marble. Anyhow, I do believe that the code for parking was changed to 1.5 from whatever it was before, 2.5 or something like that. And it's rather ironic that at the time when we're going to make parking difficult, but we only have 1.5 spaces for new development. So basically, and I believe this reduction was done to accommodate a developer who wanted to put an extra story on top of a block of apartments, rental apartments. And if they did that, there wouldn't have been enough space for car parking. So what do? You change the code. I believe that code should be restored at least to what it was before, and given careful consideration to see if we can get more, because it's only going to be a problem. As you're aware from the what we've been talking about with Habitat, they have talked now about 2 per unit, but it's still insufficient. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you. Okay. Anyone else here for any? Oh, yeah, come on up. Lori Chase.
Hello, Lori Chase, 705 Cowden Drive. And I just want to say, I really appreciate this new council and listening. And on that subject, about a month ago, I put on Facebook the question that I think Ingrid asked, why aren't people coming? Oh, it was Aaron.
Aaron gets credit for that.
Coming to city council meetings. So I put it out there and got 18 responses or so, but I think you all got my email this morning.
I did receive it.
Okay, great. And it's more about listening, and I think action is what people want to see, and they want to feel like they're not in some kind of weird spotlight. I've just gotten used to being up here, but I'm not really comfortable, and I don't feel intimidated. I just don't feel comfortable. That's my own problem. So I hope that helps. And thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Elizabeth, anything? You're just here to listen. Okay, thank you for attending. I'm going to mention on that too, and that is that in the coming months, there are quite a few different scheduled opportunities for community members to meet with council, not in front of the podium and not on a microphone or camera. So hopefully we'll start announcing those, and it'll be an opportunity for people to come and we'll listen while they talk. So instead of the opposite here. So thank you guys so much. Anyone else? And let's check also online. Do we have anyone online that would like to speak? Take that as a no. So we are going to close the public comment section.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on one
I just
second.
want to clarify.
Hold on. There you go.
I don't necessarily want citizens to come to council meetings. I just wanted more community engagement. I think that was my hope, and it came from a conversation that we had talking about the elections and how I think voter participation has been a big concern. I would like to see more community engagement and I want, so feel free to email, reach out in other ways. I think that's really my goal and my hope. And like Ingrid said, we're going to come to you.
So thank you. Thank you all. Okay, so we are going to close that portion and we are going to move on to consent agenda. So I will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Counselor Kaup.
Also move to approve consent agenda.
Great. Counselor Schechter.
It was second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes
May I make one
unanimously.
Comment for the record, Ms. Mayor.
Yeah, okay.
Just for the public's information, there's one item here that does involve what I consider modest raise in fees regarding our trash at the recycle and some other fees, and just they are in the consent agenda, and my opinion and council by consent, they're extremely reasonable. Just, thank you.
Yep, perfect. And Counselor Dem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to recognize Charlie Willman and Paula Gora, who have been appointed to the DDA board. We have, due to this motion, we have Charlie Willman with a term expiring on 2027 and Paula Gora, a term expiring 2026. Thank you for applying and congratulations.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, you guys, we started a trend of acknowledging the people on the consent agenda who were appointed to our positions. And so I just want to make sure that we do it unilaterally. So Counselor Kaup.
Okay, and I would like to mention Katie Navarre.
Navarez.
Navarez. I want to make sure I say her name correctly. And she was just appointed to the Housing Commission. So welcome and thank you. Looking forward to serving with her.
And her family has a long history of serving. Her dad is the chairman on our Planning and Zoning Commission. So, okay. Moving on to regular agenda items on actions and or presentations. The very first one is the Middle Colorado Watershed Council update. And welcome back. Nice to see you, Paula Stepp.
Paula Stepp. I live in Glenwood Springs. And I'm here representing the Middle Colorado Watershed Council, and with me is Mike Schuster, who's just joined our board of directors. Mike actually works for the city of Glenwood, which we try to do. We try to incorporate participation from our towns and communities along the river. Let me see. I'm going to share a presentation. Well, see if I can do this. Might need your help, Brian. There we go. I found it. Yeah. That's a good start. I'm taking all my time up right here. Is that good?
No, you're fine. Yeah.
I made it crystal clear she had under 5 minutes. Water quality.
It is.
And that's why I'm here.
The work you do is important.
And I'm not sure how we're going to move this forward either, so we'll figure that out as we go. But the Middle Colorado Watershed Council came into being in 2009 with stakeholders throughout the watershed area, which goes from Glenwood Canyon down to Debec. Coming together to say we need to take care of our water. We need to know what's happening in our watershed and protect this really precious resource. In 2014, they became a nonprofit, 2013, sorry. And in the last few years, we've been rather busy finishing up a stream management plan, an IWNP, which we included work with our conservation districts in the area. And became particularly busy because of the Grizzly Creek fire. I'm just not getting it. Oh, come on, how does this work? Moving forward, clicking forward.
Yeah, it worked.
We did. Great, excellent. So in the Grizzly Creek fire, what we ended up doing is got state funding to put rain gauges in Glenwood Canyon so that we could help the weather service track weather. We did water quality monitoring and got a data dashboard for each of our towns and communities along the river so they could see changes in water quality when we had debris flow. We worked getting soil moisture monitoring going because water pours off the landscape when you have a burned environment. And so we wanted to see how we could mitigate more of the problems with water. And that's really part of a statewide study with USGS, actually a nationwide study. And all of the work that we did ended up folding into what is a new concern of the state, which is being wildfire ready. The Middle Colorado Watershed Council has been involved in 2 collaboratives. We are part of the Roaring Fork Collaborative because we are centered in Glenwood Springs, and Glenwood Canyon was such an important part. But from encouragement from our natural resource agencies, from our fire districts, from landowners, from our towns, we have been providing a leadership opportunity in developing a watershed collaborative along the Colorado River. And for Glenwood's sake, and that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight, you overlap both of these collaboratives, just like the Middle Colorado does. So we have brought to you an MOU, and we have Doug Gerald with the fire district, the Glenwood Fire District, who's been coming to our meetings. The fire district has also approved being a part of this organization. And the MOU is intended to say, we're all working together to be ready for wildfire and to be ready for the post-wildfire events, because that will happen. Garfield County has had more wildfires than any other county in the state. One of our towns on the border, Newcastle, is one of the highest risk towns. And we know wildfire is going to happen because we've already seen them happening this year. It's part of our environment. It's part of what we're experiencing because of drought. So that MOU was part of your packet. So I hope that you will consider signing that and agreeing to being part of this collaborative that says, yes, we are ready to work together. Just so you know, we are working on other things as well. Right now, we do some restoration projects in the area. As I mentioned, we have an integrated steering management plan, and stakeholders from all over our watershed came together to develop that for aquatics, for water quality, for recreation, and for consumptive use, towns, landowners, that type of thing. And some of those, because of that IWNP, we ended up with 55 projects, and some of those are listed in front of you. Things that might be particularly pertinent to the town of Glenwood is because of what you deal with a certain gravel pit. We have a strong engagement with the county on what we can do with gravel pit restoration after a gravel pit is through. So we're working on best management practices there. Another thing that we're working on would be best management practices for floodplain use. We are just developing that piece, and we will engage the towns on the corridor when we look at that, because you have development in your floodplains. How am I doing, Ryan? Almost there.
Yeah.
Like really, Paula, you're good. Just, yeah, we're grateful you're here.
So we also work on recreation. As I said, that's one of the 4 categories that were part of our IWNP. We just recently finished a Spanish translation of our English version of a river access guide to the Colorado River that starts in Glenwood Canyon and goes all the way down to Tepec. I brought some of the Spanish language versions for the Parks and Rec Department to have over at the Rec Center. And we had some English versions that we gave a few years ago. And we are ordered more. We're waiting for grant funding to pay for those. And when we get those, we'll get more of those copies there. What we're finding, of course, is the rafting companies and the fishing guides are very excited about these. And so they're able to get them to their customers for access to the river. And if you'd like, I would give any one of you one of those river access guides in English or Spanish. The other thing that's going on with recreation is a app that we are putting together for CPW, so that as anglers are out there fishing, if they catch a fish that's a nuisance species, they can report it to CPW. CPW then can react to that and track those species to make sure that we're keeping them out of our rivers and our streams. Typically, what you see is you find them in gravel pits or you find them in ponds. People actually stock them. We don't want them getting into the river. There's also a part of that app that speaks to mollusks. So when you're looking at those invasive species in our waterways, we want to know if you see something, although with mollusks, sometimes they're so small, be rare that you would actually catch those ones. And then also recreation wise, we have our annual Wild and Scenic Film Festival, which is coming up at the end of this month, and I'm inviting all of you. That will be happening on September 28th at the Vaudeville Theater. We're having a second showing. That'll be at the Ute, which will actually be the first showing on September 23rd. We'd love for you to be there. That again is celebrating this wonderful resource we have, which is water. And as all of you know, in the drought situation that we've been in the last 20 years, it's really important on how we work together on that. And speaking to that, we'll continue to engage with city staff from all of the towns on this river corridor. On projects that we can get involved in that you're doing now. One of the things brought to mind the other morning when I was at a meeting with the River Commission is what's going on with South Canyon. I knew that was in process, but I brought it to the attention of the presenter that the things that the Middle Colorado Watershed Council can do is help find funding for restoration projects along the creek side, so that saves you funding in your city budget by us working in coordination with you to do projects like that. Our future is really kind of looking at what we're dealing with drought and wildfire, how we can take care of restoration and invasive species removal, really looking to what we can learn from our stakeholders and what those projects might be as we move into the future. As I said, we had that IWMP, we finished in 2020, we had a fire hit like right when they said, okay, it's a wrap. And immediately that changed what that IWMP is. So it is a living document and we will change and accommodate what each of the towns and what other stakeholders need as far as the Middle Colorado Watershed Council. So please consider the MOU that we provided. There's no financial tie to that. It's just saying that we're working together to prepare for wildfire. Thank you. Oh, and let me have Mike just say a few words because he has just joined us, as I said.
Council, my name is Michael Schuster. I'm the newest board member, but I am also the chief wastewater treatment operator for the city of Glenwood Springs. So water quality is sort of the job.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of points to what Paula said that I wanted to hone in on a little bit is something with that some of those soil monitoring sites that we're putting in. Sort of on a more of my business side of things is that is going to help sort of act as an early warning system for the water treatment facility, that if there's certain tipping points that if we begin to get close to those, the water treatment facility can know and get ready to prepare for potential mudslides or impacts to our infrastructure. So there's just a dead set point there. I am also really proud of the starting to put more of our guides in Spanish, and we're really working across all of our documents to try and put them in Spanish. I used to work with Roaring Fork Conservancy, and one of the issues that we had was finding better ways to reach out to the Latino Hispanic communities and make sure that they feel like they also have stakes and ownerships in these issues as well, and that they weren't just being sidelined. There's something else, I forgot it. But then I will also just say on a personal note, I grew up fly fishing. My dad, that's what my dad taught me how to do on the Roaring Fork River. My wife is a big rafter. That's kind of how we met. And I have a 1-month-old now. So
Yeah, congratulations.
A little sleep deprived, but it's something, he's a little young to go in waders. My wife thinks he's ready to go in Westwater already, but we are looking forward to being able to share all of these experiences that we've had on the river. And so this is, very much coming from a personal side. So I do encourage and recommend everyone, sign this MOU, and that finally, the thing that I've learned with water is that there is, no one can do this alone, that we need all the support we can get from any and every NGO, municipal, local, county, state, and federal government. So, and
you.
thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, before you two walk away, I'm curious if there's a timeline on signing the MOU that you're wanting us to have that by.
We're hoping to get it signed this fall.
Okay.
We have to work around the US Forest Service schedule. This is actually a US Forest Service agreement.
Uh-huh.
And it has to be after their fiscal year, which is October 1st. But
Okay.
on the other side of that, we're trying to pursue the collaborative is
Mhm.
trying to pursue grant funding, and the sooner we can get an MOU in place, the
Okay.
stronger we are as far as those fund requests are.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable if we put this? Oh, looks like Sumner's. Counselor Shachter.
One quick question, is it theoretically, if we approve it right now, is there, when you go to the Forest Service, is there likely to be a revision that we might have to revisit? Or is this MOU that we have likely the MOU that will go forward for you?
I would like to say that is what will go forward, but we still have other people looking at it.
Mhm.
And I can just say when the Roaring Fork Collaborative put together an MOU, there were a lot of signatures coming in and there were some changes due to one of the people who had to sign it. So they had to go back and do it again, but the basic, it was like minor word changes. So I think the character, the content is pretty much there. But there could be some just minor adjustments as far as one word being in or out.
I'm
that
going
kind of
to
thing.
have our legal counsel mention something and then we'll come back.
Yeah,
to
I guess what I was
counsel.
going to say is, I'd recommend that we probably hold off and put it on the first meeting in October and see where we're at. I unfortunately got caught in the churn along with Paula on the Roaring Fork one.
Mhm.
That took us a while to get, we had to keep circling back. So let's put it on then. It should be pretty close at that point, maybe with direction for final review by legal and
Okay.
the mayor or something like that. But that gets us early in October, gets it approved as quickly as possible.
I think maybe possibly putting it on even a consent agenda for the first meeting in October would be
Absolutely.
sufficient.
Yeah.
Is that comfortable for everyone? Okay, Counselor Cap.
That was going to be my only comment was I'd like to have a chance to have legal
Mhm.
review it and give us their recommendation and then, yeah, it could
Perfect.
go on consent at
Okay.
that point. Thank you.
Thanks all. Thank you guys so much for coming this evening. We appreciate you both.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Support from the Financial Advisory Board.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to item 10, which is code amendments to Title 070 regarding childcare and other minor changes. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We're just getting the presentation uploaded into the computer or screen. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Hardcastle, Longevity Principal Planner with the Community Development Department. The item in front of you right now is the planning file 4023, which covers Title 70 code amendments regarding childcare and other code amendments this evening. To start off with, I want to give you a little bit of background on what it is that we're talking about with childcare. We're understanding through research and news articles in the last several years that the cost of childcare has risen. We're all aware of that, and that the availability of slots for available childcare are sparse. Oftentimes with that high cost, we're finding that, and a study through the Northwest Council of Governments indicates that a family with 2 children, a 4-year-old and an infant, oftentimes will spend upwards of $27,000, which is 33% of Colorado AMI at 72,000, 35% of Garfield County AMI at just over 77,000, and 38% of Glenwood Springs AMI just under 70,000. Additionally, workers who struggle with trying to find healthcare often have significant negative impacts that are associated with their job. They miss promotional opportunities, and oftentimes they can lose a job. Regarding the allocation of slots that are available, oftentimes we've seen, and which has also been recorded with news articles several times in the last few years, that more than 250 children at several different locations have been on a waiting list. And sometimes that can be in place for several years, to at least 2 years, if not more. Garfield County's licensed ability to service toddlers is at 8% of the county's infant population, and they're able to, with licensed facilities, care for 23% of the toddler population. Childcare clients are coming from as far as Parachute and Carbondale into Glenwood Springs. And it is clear today that securing and paying for quality childcare services are difficult for many families, to the point that parents may look to other childcare options which may not have the benefit of safety, standard of facilities, and a quality learning environment that is typically associated with licensed facilities. The remainder of the code amendments that I'll go through, other than this one, have to do with changes that are correcting errors and omissions, and require correction and provisions that warrant clarification for smooth operation and use of our code. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this plan file at their regularly scheduled July 25th meeting, 2023, and approved it unanimously 7-0. The first code change deals with childcare, in that we are expanding within the second tier down childcare centers, which are commercial. It allows for them to be permitted within the residential high density and residential transition districts, which are lower requirement, which have a lower requirement for lot sizes. The other 4 lower density zoning districts are special use permits for those commercial centers. The other one we're dealing with here is the third tier down, the child daycare home, which is categorized as large, typically for a larger number of children, and not just older, but a larger number. And we're proposing the movement of special use permit requirements for all of those zone districts that you see there, across 6 of those, and those childcare facilities would be allowed permitted by right. It is of note at the bottom there that I have with a lot of things that you can't read, that there was a House bill passed in 21 that indicated that within House Bill 21-1222, which is your Exhibit C, that local governing entities such as ourselves can impose additional restrictions on the large childcare centers, as you're seeing tonight, as proposed for these particular changes, and doesn't necessarily cover the commercial centers that we're additionally talking about. But the law does provide some authority for us to regulate parking and traffic when we have 2 large care facilities next to each other. So it does give us a little bit of latitude to manage that when needed. The second minor change has to do with a summary of dimensional standards, which covers an error that was posted at 20% for light industrial and river industrial non-residential standards covering landscaped area. So we're just bringing that into correction, lack of a better word for, to align with the rest of the code. So that's just an error there. The third change covers accessory use structures with the exclusion of the language in the section at the bottom saying only when they are internal to an existing residential dwelling or existing accessory structure. It will now, it's proposed to read accessory dwelling units are allowed by right within a historic district, which now is in agreement with this second sentence in the purpose and intent, which is that this subsection is to promote small rental housing units in the form of necessary dwelling units on lots with detached single-family dwellings. So this is making housing opportunities more possible. The fourth change is on our 70-40-60 off-street parking and loading. Parking alternatives tandem parking. Tandem has a definition word that needs to be removed for ease of read and interpretation. The word uses is asked to be omitted. Landmark alteration certificate in number 5 under criteria for reviewing structure demolition. We're proposing the removal of the word importance as it is unnecessary. Number 6 in 70-70-30, all other terms defined, focuses on porch, which is placing the word projection in and taking protection out. Makes more sense to have that in there.
Yes.
In terms of the review criteria and analysis, as per section 70-60-40 of the municipal code, these code amendments were reviewed by planning and zoning, as I mentioned earlier. They did approve it unanimously 7-0. You this evening, City Council, have the ability to approve with conditions, or deny this amendment. You also have the ability to remand it back to the planning director for further consideration. Just want to let you know that the proposed code amendment changes uphold the goals of the comprehensive plan update 2023 and other city policies, specifically preserving Glenwood's character, maintaining livability, increasing the vibrancy of commercial success throughout Glenwood Springs, promoting long-term sustainable and diverse economic development, and providing equitable and diverse housing for the entire community. Additionally, the changes that you see in front of you this evening do not conflict with other provisions of the code. I fell behind there, sorry. Provisions of the code and other it also addresses previous language errors and provides clarification, as well as items which seek to allow additional flexibility for childcare facilities. It also observes all of the changes observe deficiencies and address necessary changes in existing code and are in line with the purpose and intent of the code. The action item in front of you this evening covering sections 70-30-20 concerning childcare, 70-20-20 non-residential dimensional standards, 70-30-40 accessory dwelling units, 70-40-60 tandem parking, 70-50-40 criteria for reviewing structure demolition, and 70-70-30 all other defined porch. With that, I would like to put in front of you the staff recommendation for approval of the text amendments with the following suggested findings, as I read to you a moment ago, which are consistent with the comprehensive plan and other city policies. They don't conflict with other provisions of the code or other provisions of Glenwood Springs Municipal Code, are necessary to address a demonstrated community need, are necessary to respond to substantial changes in conditions and or in policy, and are consistent with the general purpose and intent of this code.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to bring it back to council for questions and start with Councilor Sachter.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for the work. A couple questions for the record and my lack of homework. Could you differentiate very quickly in terms of scope, size, and or hours, childcare center versus childcare large versus childcare small?
So the Child Care Center is a commercial venture which has ages under 18 They're allowed to operate up to 24 hours. And they have a number of allowances in there where they have 5 or more children. And the term for this child care center also is commonly known as daycare centers, school age childcare centers, before and after school programs, nursery schools, kindergartens, preschools, day camps, summer camps, and centers for developmentally disabled children. There aren't any other restrictions or considerations for that one. The large allows for 7 to 12 children ages 2 through 18. No more than 2 children can be younger than the age of 2. And there is no time restriction on that. The small is allowed to operate only less than 24 hours. Will contain or can contain children numbering from anywhere from 2 to 6, from birth to 18, no more than 2 children under the age of 2 at any given time. And 2 additional children can also be added to the 6 who are attending full day school, which is typically registered kindergarten through 6.
Thank you. So.
Oh,
help
sorry,
me out.
excuse me, kindergarten age 6, not through 6.
So if I'm reading our zoning map correctly, and residential high particularly, we've got some, and unless I'm reading it wrong, we've got some pretty dense residential areas in North Glenwood, South Blake, over by Easy Street, and some adjacent to downtown. Am I reading that correctly?
I believe so.
Okay, then I'll make my comments later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Gotis.
So Jim, there's a lot of technical stuff in this that I just didn't follow. So when you talk about the, in general, 6 zones as a use by right, just give me in a nutshell. Don't go to, I don't care about that. Just tell me what kind of neighborhoods, like, what are we talking about in general? Is it a use by right? And why wouldn't it be a use by right community-wide?
I don't think that there is a typical or standard neighborhood that we're looking. There is no targeting. We're just trying to open it up. And actually, in a general sense, we had looked at making these childcare changes, which are actually a requirement of the House bill to begin with. So we're actually falling in line with what's been set up on the state level.
Right. So can you tell me, like, give me Glenwood Park, Park East, Park West, North, I mean, what are the 6 zoning areas? I just don't know zoning. So tell me where would they be allowed? Where would they not be allowed in Glenwood?
Well, when you're looking at the large childcare centers, those are allowed throughout all of the residential districts in town. Anywhere where there's a strict allowance of residential throughout. The childcare centers, the commercial, are only allowed in the RH and RT, but they would also be allowed in the other 4 as a special use.
And what about home providers?
That's what these are.
That's what this is.
Okay, you just said, I thought you said large centers.
Oh, no, sorry, you're right. So the large, those.
I don't care about large, the home, so sorry, go back.
It's okay.
Regular home provider,
Okay.
home childcare program.
So the home providers on a large scale would be allowed across the board as a permitted use. The small childcare is allowed across all residential districts as a permitted use right now already.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Counselor Dem.
I was just gonna say, could I please see the table again with the Ps and S's and the zones and all that
Is there-
good stuff? This really explains it very nicely.
Mhm.
Actually, that's all I needed to see for now. Thank you very much. I'm gonna work on this while yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Guess I'll look for a motion or, yeah, before, oh, Counselor Gotis.
No, I was gonna make a motion.
Oh, great.
You were so speedy.
So much
Sorry if I may,
enthusiasm.
Somehow the ordinance didn't get in the packet. So while it's great if you guys are supportive, but we're gonna have to bring this back at the next meeting with the ordinance.
I move to continue to the next meeting.
So move, second.
Make a comment?
Yeah.
Well, here's what we could do. We can wrap it up and kind of add support for it and then put it in consent in the future. Does anybody want to add any additional comments?
Ordinance is going to have to be a public hearing.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
So if you have comments that might change the outcome,
okay.
I'd love to hear them, but otherwise we'll just move it on. Thank you.
Counselor Schechter.
I have, in general, I'm supportive. I have one request or consideration. I have, based on the zoning map, I have serious concerns about childcare center being permitted in residential high. I would like to see that remain special permit because there's some real dense, difficult parking, residential, closely packed areas there that there's going to be a significant impact for the childcare center. I'd rather the rural transition is so nominal, that doesn't matter to me. So that would be one major concern of mine.
Okay.
Other than that, I have no problem permitting, and just that one change would make me way more supportive as opposed to not.
So Counselor Godas, hold on one second, and then Counselor Dominic.
So Sumner, I did this. This is what I did for 7 years as a director of the Early Childhood Network. And I think a lot of the concerns that people would have, your concern specifically about that, is addressed because there is a 35 square foot per child outdoor play requirement. So especially when you talk about high density residential, if you're running a center of any kind that has, say, 20 kids, you're going to need, what is that? 700 minimum 700 square feet of playground, fenced playground attached to it. So I'm not saying your concern is not valid. We don't need to go back and forth, but I think the limitations that the state puts on these childcare centers is what makes it so difficult. And the reason why only 8% of Garfield County has it. So I'm not saying it solves every problem, but it does make it almost impossible to open a for-profit childcare center in Glenwood. And I don't think we have any right now.
My only reaction to that would be, if it's that difficult, then what's the problem of making it special use as opposed to somebody with a big lot finding it right in the middle of residential? That's all. That's, anyway, we can
Sure.
have that discussion when it
Yeah.
becomes an ordinance. Thank you.
Okay.
So I had a motion to continue.
Yeah.
Second.
And
Okay.
second, and then, does anybody want to add any additional comments before we pass on to the next item? Before we vote on that, Counselor Dunn.
Okay, just real quick. I know you guys been kind of talking, but I'm looking at this. I'm looking at zoning, special use, permit, use by right. Something I would leave it as is, just because I think with the state regulations, leaving it as is, we may get something rather than nothing. So special use is just another step that I don't think we should incorporate into this. So that's all.
And I'm going to jump in and just say special use allows for a little, and I hate to use the term, but NIMBY. The reality is if you look at the numbers, we have a bit of a childcare crisis in this community. And demographically, sometimes those higher density areas are where people who likely want to stay at home and maybe run a childcare facility because they can afford, that's their entry level homes. Maybe there are stay-at-home moms who can add a couple kids into their, this is the power of council. We cannot we can't force someone to open a childcare facility, but legislatively we can make it more accessible. And that accessibility that's our power. That's really the only power of council really is legislature. And so here's this opportunity that we can make Glenwood more open and receptive to people helping us solve this problem. And I hear your point, but my concern is that the limitations we would put on those higher density areas, while your point is well taken, I think it's that the demographic who owns those homes, so it will likely be more responsive and to having these facilities.
I would agree. They're more likely to be small and large
Yeah.
than the center. That's my.
Okay,
concern.
okay,
That's
okay, okay.
Opening up 7 slots.
Yeah.
That's-
Okay. I'll go ahead and call the question, and this is a motion to continue, and we'll get back in front of everyone with an ordinance regarding this information. Do you want to put our little question thing up there? I don't know what to call it. Thank you. The vote thing. Thank you.
It's unanimous. It passes.
Okay. Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time tonight.
And that's a big thanks to Jim and community development, all of those changes, and also to planning and zoning, who went through all of those and gave some great recommendations. So thank you all. Okay, moving on to item number 11, update on emergency evacuation. Hello.
Hello, I'm Doug Gerald, Deputy Chief for the Fire Department. I've been asked to come here and kind of give an update of the process, the planning process we're in for the evacuation plan. It is referred to as Glenwood Springs Emergency Operations Plan, Traffic Emergency Operations Plan, but because the lion's share of it does revolve around evacuation, it has become known as the evacuation plan. By the very nature of what we do in emergency services, we are constantly working on revising, successfully implementing, and training on these multidisciplinary, multi-agency plans with emergency response. And this is another part of that evolution. So in the fire service, one of our mantras is, in order, we focus on life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. And one of the biggest things we can do as far as the life safety aspect is remove people from harm's way, i.e. evacuation in this particular incident. So we have been working with EST, a consultant, to work on this evacuation plan. And but it is a work in progress at this point in time. We're aiming for end of October, early November to have a final plan. And that plan is going to be nuanced based on what we all know as Glenwood's local hazards, local concerns, some of our limitations, some of our response capacities. So I do need to give a brief description of the participants in this. The primary players have been fire, law enforcement, city management, working with the consultant. But we've also had public works involved, engineering, parks and rec. We really are trying to take a comprehensive approach. Stakeholders from outside of the city have been the county emergency operations folks, 911 dispatch, the sheriff's department, CDOT, the list goes on and on and on, all the way down through RAFTA, the school districts, so on and so forth, really to try to get a good comprehensive look again. So, but this approach to safely removing people from harm's way, what the plan is ultimately going to give us is a clear playbook on expectations, roles, and responsibilities, chain of command, lines of authority, all things that play into a solid incident command structure and the effective resolution of that incident. Part of the plan is going to involve predetermined evacuation zones, which will facilitate, rather than just, hey, let's evacuate all of West Glenwood and the troubles that might cause, is, hey, let's evacuate zone A, and at a certain point, let's do zone B. Let's put C on pre-evacuation. So that's going to help with the process quite a bit. To the extent possible, it's going to identify vulnerable populations so we can take into consideration how that's going to play into the evacuation process. It's going to reinforce our evacuation notification procedures. It's going to it's going to help establish predetermined evacuation routes, procedures, and destinations. And I'll circle back around to that in a minute, because I know that's on the top of a lot of folks' minds. It's going to help with exhaustive resource identification, identify interoperable communications plans. It'll also address evacuation zone security, control, and re-entry. And of course, there's the public information and messaging component to it. So back to the identification of predetermined primary evacuation routes. These are going to be the main ways we can remove people from harm's way. And as you can see on there, this is just a preliminary map. And Ryan, are you able to like maybe zoom in on West Glenwood? Just as an example, and I do need to point out, we referenced the city of Glenwood Springs, but it is also the surrounding district. But just for West Glenwood Springs, for example, part of this plan to take into account, well, the firefighters are let's say there's a wildfire moving into town. The firefighters are likely going to be trying to extinguish the fire to the best they can. Law enforcement is going to be helping us with evacuations. They might be able to help control some of the traffic pattern stuff, but this plan does things like involves public works and the streets department helping us secure key locations on these primary evacuation routes in an attempt to keep traffic moving, because we all know the issues that can cause in Glenwood Springs, and again, it can happen quickly. So these are in the blue, looks purple on the screen, but these are the primary routes that we're going to focus those resources on as quickly as we can to secure movement out of these areas. And that example is just West Glenwood. It does reference also the A-line breaks, which the one coming off of Center Drive, I think we're anticipating, Matt, we're just waiting on traffic control company, right? Everything else is ready to go to pull the trigger on, and 2024 for the other one. Okay, yeah.
Is that Center Drive or Storm King?
Sorry, Storm.
Okay,
Storm.
okay. Thank you. It's okay. They're really close together. Yeah.
So, yeah, so again, a comprehensive plan of getting people to safety. And the reason we included so many other stakeholders is so we can take into account what's going to be going on with Valley View, what's going to be going on with St. Stephen's. Yeah, really that overall look to take into account everything. So a couple things I do have to mention. I've heard there is some concern about the fact that this is not going to be a public facing document. I can tell you that is correct when you look at the document in its entirety. There are some sensitive and security type issues that will not be public facing, but the intent is to have a public document. Whether it's the full document with some redacted sections, whether it's an abbreviated document, whether it's a quick reference document, we haven't quite decided yet, but we do realize the importance of that. So, and then to tie all this together, of course, there's the outreach and public education that needs to occur to make sure our community is aware of the expectations and how we can help them and what the process is going to be.
It's great. I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to council. We'll start with Councilor Dem.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Could I see the south end of town, please?
Even my wife won't let me drive.
Okay, you don't have to zoom in. I'm just curious, what's the plan going that way?
Yeah.
Overall. Okay, cool. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Okay. Great. Any questions on that?
No, I just wanted to see what at this point is currently.
Okay. Councilor Zelinski.
Thank you very much. I want to give you an opportunity to speak to how this isn't something that was like just initiated this spring. This is something ongoing that your department and all of you work on kind of consistently throughout all time. You're not addressing any one concern, or, nobody's been. There was some feedback that I got when I was like sharing some of, the resources that we have all around town. There's the wildfire preparedness signs that have the site. And so I was sharing that, and there was some concern that, some of that information was from 2017, but you're constantly working on this, correct?
Yes.
And I just want to give you an opportunity to make sure that everybody's aware, nobody is not taking this seriously or making this a priority.
Yeah, we are taking it seriously. We always have been. I mentioned earlier, we're constantly working on plans, and nearly every plan we have addresses something like this, whether it's our hazard mitigation plans, automatic aid, mutual aid, mountaineering mutual aid, traffic incident management plan, which you've all seen that we implemented last year, that has, at least from the inside looking around, been wildly successful.
Agreed.
So it is always at the top of our minds. And to go back to one of the things I said earlier, if our priority is life safety, oftentimes the number one thing we can do is evacuate people.
Wow. And I just really want to say thank you because I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you. Counselor Schachter.
Thank you. Two things. First, thanks. Reminiscing, many of us have been through 2 evacuations, full town evacuations virtually. Yeah, we're a bigger town, but we're also have better resources and we were successful then. I have no doubt that this is a high priority. But I also want to point out to Councilor Zelinski's point and others, on our city site, which is not always the easiest to navigate, there is not specific planning because it isn't there, but there is emergency preparedness and planning on our site to the public, where at least there's some updates available as to what's going on. So it's out there. It's just not, okay, if you have to move, you have to turn left on 11th and right on Grand, but we're being updated and it's on the city site. Thank you.
Okay.
And we do have to remain somewhat generic with evacuation. So I think you all know it depends on the incident. A wildfire approaching from one direction is different than a wildfire approaching from a different direction. The incident type, heaven forbid, a train derailment and a smoke plume is going to have a different evacuation look than a violent incident that has occurred. So a lot of people say, well, why can't you do it like they do on the coast with hurricane runs? Well, they have several days to prepare. They know what's coming and they can say, yeah, we're going to go from low ground to inland and maybe some higher ground.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. So we have to be prepared to establish in more detail some of these things at the incident command post and say, we need to establish this and send them there.
Yeah.
And these are the routes we're going to do our best to secure.
Because the hurricanes usually come from one direction, right? Is that why? Yeah.
They see them forming and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And whereas you just don't know where an incident could come from. Can you kind of just elaborate on that just a little bit? And then Councilor Kalpa, I'll jump into your question, but I think that the community feels like there should be this, very transparent, open plan that's out there. Can you tell us why some information would be kept confidential or not necessarily confidential, but incident specific?
For example, we will have cell phone numbers of key players.
Okay.
And we don't need the public saying, well, I want to know what's going on. So I'm going to call Chief Darris because my kids go to school with him.
Yeah.
So cell phones be out of not be in the list. Certain things like reunification sites, heaven forbid, we have a hostile event at a school.
Yeah.
And you jump in here, Chief Darris, if you want. That's not something we would want to pre-notify somebody with the wrong intentions of where we might be sending kids to meet.
Yeah.
That's an example of, well, that stuff shouldn't be public facing.
Yeah.
But every part of it we feel is appropriate to be public facing will be.
Okay. So ultimately, in big picture, we're not trying to keep information from the community. We're simply trying to recognize that certain information could either be confusing or present a safety risk. And so we're trying to make that discernment on what information is released. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kaplan.
Oh, dear.
It's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
It's just habit. Thank you. A quick question, and I look forward to seeing the plan when it's done and completed, but as far as, do you know what we'll have as far as notification systems, like really quick emergency notification? Will we have sirens? Will it be the Garco notification system? You know, like by text message?
It'll be a
or-
combination of two, sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
It'll be
Okay.
a combination of at least two things. The primary things we use are just people signing up for the emergency notifications through Garfield
The
County.
Garfield County.
Dispatch.
Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
There's also something we can utilize called iPods. So I can say I'm the incident commander or a designee under command. I can call dispatch and say, send out an iPods notification for a certain radius.
Okay.
And it pings every cell phone in that radius.
Ah,
So
okay.
between the two, we are hoping we hit a large part of our permanent, semi-permanent population who have signed up,
Great.
but also all our tourists, everyone via that iPod system.
So that system, you don't have to be signed up.
No,
It just pings. the
No.
cell. Oh, that's.
there could be
that's
somebody from Florida at the Hot
encouraging, right.
Springs and their phone would go.
Yeah.
Great.
And,
Okay.
and what
And-
about, oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, I had a couple of
Okay,
questions.
yeah, go ahead.
Also, do you know if we'll be looking at any, say, safe zones within the city? Like identifying sites where if for whatever reason we can't get people out fast enough, they can go and have a relative degree
Yeah,
of safety.
Safe zones, areas of refuge,
Okay.
evacuation
Mhm.
centers, we're looking at all of that.
We'll look at
yes.
that too.
Yeah.
Great, great. And then on the Thames, can you remind me, I know part of the traffic mitigation is to stop all that traffic. Let's say if something happens like it did in South Canyon a couple of years ago, where it happens at 3:30 when we've got the traffic's really ramping up heading westward. Do we already have that in place where that will be halted at West Bank? Or is that something that will be more part of this plan on that regional basis?
This is an augmentation to the temp plan, which is
Okay.
more of a countywide and even regional approach, but this part of the plan supplements that, like I said earlier,
Right.
more nuanced for Glenwood's and Glenwood's problems.
Right.
Yes, the temp would be activated out of a unified command post. So you tie the two plans together. We
Okay.
deal with our local evacuation stuff, but we would also go ahead and address the regional. But let's stop people on Rifle.
Right.
Let's stop them in dots.
Right.
And let's not add to the problem. So the actions that would be taken would be a combination of those.
Great.
Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. What agencies, you mentioned a couple agencies, but is this plan also collaborative with like CDOT? I mean, what other groups are associated?
The list is long and I'll
Is it?
probably miss some.
That's okay. I'd just like to
But
hear that. Yeah.
outside of the city,
Mhm.
it's a lot of the county
Mhm.
entities and
Great.
sub entities. But yeah, CDOT, CSP, RAFTA, because
Yeah,
the movement of mass populations that
Mhm.
comes into play. Not just the school districts, but also their transportation department, again, for
Mhm.
the mass movement of people. And we even went so far to discuss or get input from the assisted living facilities.
Mhm.
Mountain Valley
fantastic.
Developmental. And again, I'm sure I'm missing
That's okay.
a lot because we have
Yeah.
a lot of people involved, even down to the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, perfect.
So
Yeah. And when those calls go out, will they go out in multiple languages? Like, how does that work to make sure we have 35 to 40% of our community is Latino? And I want to make sure that, if Spanish is their primary or their,
Yeah. It's not my area of expertise,
Okay.
but Garfield County Dispatch has the ability to immediately send it out in Spanish as well,
Excellent.
those
Okay.
notifications.
Perfect.
And then there's another process
Mhm.
that is somewhat new, that there are 30 different primary languages,
On brief, there's.
Oh.
Okay,
150 different.
excellent. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Graham.
Good evening,
And thank you.
council.
Mhm.
Brianna Starbuck, Public Information Officer. So in terms of languages and also just broadly communications in an emergency event, for sure, signing up for those emergency alerts, both through the county and through the city, we have our separate alert systems. And the city alerts do go out in English and Spanish as soon as we can. Typically, there is a small delay between the English and Spanish. Just we have to get it out as soon as we can, as fast as we can. But we do have arrangements in place to get it out in Spanish as quickly as possible. Additionally, through the county, they offer an app called Reach Well, and this is a program that is also offered through Pitkin County, which is an app that doesn't require anything besides a cell phone number and a download, and it will automatically translate all the messages that go out through those emergency platforms into, I think it's 150 different languages.
Awesome.
Given this is an automatic translation service, so it's not perfect, but that is available right now. Additionally, beyond sort of like email, text communications, you know, think broadly too.
Yeah.
Like, let's say something happened and our internet went out, like we would still need to get a hold of people. So radio communications, that traditional media piece is another part of that. And so thinking about ways we communicate with people outside of digital platforms is also part of this emergency.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
The input
That's
on
awesome.
this, if I didn't mention her
Yeah.
earlier.
It feels so incredibly collaborative and also very timely. I think we have residents who, because of recent events in Hawaii, they are scared and there is we feel vulnerable. And so I just want to remind the community that this is ongoing. We've been investing in this for years at this point. It's not just your community, your family members. It's our family members. It's the emergency services family members. We have kids at schools. We have families and, family members in retirement communities. And I think it's important to all of us to have this. I think that I know behind the scenes that it's evolving and it's really close to feeling like we're ready. This is happening. And in the event that something came up, we do have a plan. We have made those, yes. And so I just want to thank you and everyone involved for doing this. Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time. And sorry if you felt like we were grilling you.
No,
Yeah.
no, I feel like you guys went easy on me.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. Our next item is an update. Oh, we weren't going to do public comment on this one. We're not, I think your best bet is to maybe just email us any questions and we'll get you some responses. You know how to get in touch with us. Okay, good. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to Southbridge update.
Hello, City Council. Ryan Gordon, City Engineer for Glenwood Springs. So wanted to give you guys an update on Southbridge. Back in June, we had a work session, which brought you, I hope, up to speed. And so I hope to build on that. Not planning right now initially to go backwards, but happy to answer questions or revisit things from that previous workshop session. There's been two updates, two things I wanted to mention about Southbridge. One is we resubmitted for the big rural surface transportation grant through the DOT. If you recall, in 2022, the city submitted and just missed out. We redid some of the paperwork, the documentation, redid what's called the BCA, the benefit cost analysis, to hope to convince the grantors the need for Southbridge. We submitted that for $50 million this time. That's up from $33 million. One of the big changes that we did is we revisited the cost estimate that was produced by the engineer. To go back just a little bit, that cost estimate was done on November 2021 with some escalations to the end of 2022, a 5% inflation increase. Since then, we know true numbers from when the estimate was done. And so we've actually increased the inflation numbers quite substantially based on the CDOT construction cost index. In addition to that, we recognize there were a couple missed items in the cost estimate that we have included. And so between all that, the total cost of the project, again, that 2022 number that was developed for the previous grant submission was $57.4 million. Our new number as of now was $76.1 for Southbridge. So that is the reason why we asked for more money, is to include those additional costs that were not in there, but then also that big inflation number. And just to give an order of magnitude, the construction cost index per CDOT was approximately 21% between 2021 and 2022 and 2023. And then we had a small another increase, 8%, to kind of try to bring it up to current time. So
30% increase in 1 year?
yeah. And it's debatable if that was enough, quite frankly. We had to base it on something, and that was the best thing we have, but we've seen locally costs for whatever you want to call it in construction, anywhere between that 30% up to 150 to 200%. So we think we're getting closer to what the true number is. But again, working with our grant specialists, we thought it was appropriate to try to ask for what we, kind of the big numbers, so to speak. Not to get too much into the weeds on the grant, there's two aspects. One is the rural surface transportation grant. As I mentioned, we're looking for almost $28 million. That's predominantly the work outside of the connection with Highway 82. Another aspect of that grant is the intra grant, which is the work associated with the Rio Grande Trail and the interchange and the work on Highway 82. So that was a big milestone. We submitted that on August 21st. We expect to hear back anywhere between the next couple months to the end of the year. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will know if we actually have the grant money to proceed with Southbridge. The other thing I wanted to update you on, and one of the things I'm looking for approval and guidance from council is we are undertaking a peer review and value engineering study of the current design. We really think that we need to kind of take a look and make sure that the bridge and the associated aspects and the elements make sense. So what we've done is we've reached out and we are looking to contract with SGM engineers here in Glenwood Springs to do a peer review analysis of the bridge and the elements, to really look hard and make sure that they are truly the right selection for bridge and other elements. Not to second guess the current consultant, but really felt that we needed to kick over every stone. I kind of look at personally as, if we are going to do this project and myself as a city engineer is going to back it, I want to make really sure that we've actually looked at every option. Now, of course, the current consultants looked at 40 different alignments, tons of different options. But again, I think it's that opportunity to really take a deep dive and to see if there's items that we could delay, phase out, eliminate, save some money, and still accomplish what we want with the bridge. Additionally to the SGM, who's going to look at some of the cost aspects, but more the engineering, we're looking to contract with Flatiron Construction. They're a multinational firm based in Broomfield. They are a bridge specialist contractor. They build bridges all across the country, all across the world. Really high quality. We wanted to bring them in for constructability review to look at, to see, can we build the bridge as designed? What are the costs? What are the challenges? Again, are there ways to change the bridge design, change some aspects to see if there are ways of maybe, bringing the cost down? Additionally, we are, as part of that, we haven't worked out all the details. We've just kind of finalized some numbers with the various specialists, but would obviously want to bring in Jacobs Engineering, who is our current consultant, and be part of this process and have kind of a big design charrette and have, fruitful conversations and discuss, why was a decision made here? Why was something neglected here? Just so we understand this process. And just to give everybody a sense, right? This is a 15, 16-year project that has many, many turns. And so we're looking to try to get all the smart people in the room at one time. Part of that is to relook at where the bridge piers are and some of the wetlands and to make sure we currently understand where everything is. And again, with the idea of trying to minimize cost overall. So what I'm looking for today from guidance from you and approval would be to move forward with this peer review study. We're looking at a range of, and I know in your packet, I had some information that has been updated recently. So somewhere in the $100,000 to $110,000 to conduct this value engineering peer review study. With the idea that we would initiate this process fairly quickly within the next couple of weeks. Certainly one of the big goals or one of the big requirements would be to go and look at the wetlands. We need to do that before the snow flies. So we need to have, leaves on the trees and whatnot to identify plants. So the overall goal would be to have the peer review study done at the end of the year. And just to give a sense of kind of what we're looking at from this, not only the current bridge and to truth out the unit costs using Flatiron's extensive knowledge, but then also any of the value engineering items, whether it's a change in bridge style or change in road or a moving of the tunnel or whatever else, and try to put a cost to that. And again, as we discussed during the workshop, one of the things we want to understand as well is if we cut a bunch of cost out of the project, but it requires multi-years of changing the environmental assessment or redesign fees, are we actually losing money overall because now we incurred a delay? We're hoping to sort of uncover that with the various consultants to find out, what's the right approach. So I wanted to give you an update on that. That's kind of where we are right now. It's been kind of a slow burn on Southbridge as we're kind of getting through this grant process. But that's kind of where we stand right now. And so open it up for any questions or anything else.
I'm going to bring it back to council, and just so council kind of knows the game plan, we will bring it back to council, and then I probably will open up for any public comment. And then we'll bring it back for any motion, discussion, things like that. Okay. So Councilor Kaup.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Quick question. On that grant submittal, so are we following that up with some lobbying and going and meeting with our supporters?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that happening between now and when the grant gets?
There is, I understand that there is a trip to Washington, DC with several of the council members, to help lobby and present our position.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And one more question. Okay. The memo that I have, the staff memo has the cost for the study between 75 and 90. I heard you say 100 and something.
Yeah, and so the reason of the discrepancy is when my staff memo was due, I didn't actually have all of the numbers in and what it would cost. And so that was then updated with some more recent costs to bring in, Flatiron and whatnot for a couple of days to kind of really, turn over every stone and kick the dirt and whatnot.
They too had a 30% increase.
Okay, yes. All right, thank you.
Councilor Gotis.
Yeah, where are we at with right-of-way acquisition?
So right-of-way acquisition has been approved. That was approved based on the 90% plans. So we made the decision not to proceed with purchasing right-of-way at the time. And the primary reason was if we undertake this value engineering and we identify less land that we need to buy, or if we change the alignment of a road or an approach because of a cost savings or a change in condition, it may require either less or more right-of-way. And so therefore we wanted to make sure we understood what ultimately the project was going to be prior to spending money on right-of-way acquisition.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I have a question about right-of-way acquisition too. That was a good question. I think what we'll do then is see if there are any community members that have questions or comments. Anybody want to come up? Anybody? Anyone named Terry Parch?
Hello, thank you. Terry Parch, 38 Beaver Court, resident of Garfield County. I'm here on behalf of myself, not as a employee of Jacobs Engineering. I want to say I'm really excited to see that we're moving forward with the emergency management plan. It was a critical effort, and I think it's really important to the community. I also want to say that I recognize that costs for the bridge have increased substantially. I believe that it's critical to the community to continue that project forward. I know the council hasn't had a lot of financial support from Garfield County. I myself might visit and see if I can change that dynamic at all. But as many of you know, I did the evacuation model for Southbridge when we were looking at a FEMA grant. And at the time I had to choose a location that the fire started. And because I had had my own personal history of evacuation events from my house at Oak Meadows in 4 Mile Canyon, I started the fire there. But I would like everyone to recognize that just as Paula said, and you know, our fire department has already said, the fires can start anywhere. You know, when I was looking at the studies that were developed in 2007, there were many areas around the town that were identified as high risk. And one of those areas is, you know, immediately above Midland, essentially all the way from 8th Street to 4 Mile Canyon. And when I was modeling, I didn't choose those areas because, you know, it didn't make any sense. You know, a fire moving from the top of that ridge down, you know, any model that was developed for something like that would have catastrophic, you know, would have a catastrophic end. You know, as it was, you know, when I did the model start in 4 Mile Canyon, it took about 58 minutes for that fire using those 2020 rates of spread to reach Glenwood, the city of Glenwood Springs. I know that, you know, there's talk in the community and sometimes with the council about, you know, the fact that this is a county project, should be a county project, should be county supported. That is true. But I also want to stress that it really is a city project. If there is a fire start at Haggard Lane, if there is a fire start above Park West, we have even less time to get out of that neighborhood. We have less than an hour. And I know at least 2 of you experienced the daily backup that we have under our current conditions without panic, without a fire. Imagine trying to get all of those people through 27th Street with panic, with fire. So I want to encourage the council to keep moving on this incredibly valuable project that we've spent years and tons of dollars and tons of staff time on. I really appreciate you guys for all the time that you spend listening to all of these things and trying to make all these hard decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. It's nice to see you. Yeah, yeah. I think that the validity of what Terry brings, both from a personal perspective and professional perspective, certainly has a lot of merit. And so we appreciate you coming. Councilor Godus.
I just want to thank Terry Parch for all of her years of work on this project and the service to the city. Thank you, Terry. I don't know if we got to say goodbye to you appropriately last time, but you know, it's great to see you back here as a citizen. It's great to see you when you come on behalf of Jacobs, and you know, the city's in great hands with Ryan Gordon. So thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I got one more thing just to add before
please.
you guys kind of deliberate or do your next steps is I mentioned the cost, and we can firm up what that is. We do have existing design fees that have yet to be used. So we would be utilizing those design fees for this value engineering process. We may need to then at the end, depending on where things go, ask for additional monies to fill in that budget shortfall, depending where there are. But just so you know, we're not taking money from an existing pot of money. We actually have money set aside for design that we would be utilizing for this current study.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bring it back to council for a motion or I think that's, Councilor Godus.
I would move that we approve the cost of the study for amount between 75 and 90,000 as indicated in the staff report. Is there anything else we need? Any other action we need?
There's a revised cost.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
9110, I think.
It's 110 is the quote.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's an old staff report. The 110 amount.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Godus and a second by Councilor Kaup. I'm going to bring it back to council for any comments prior to calling the question. Councilor Kaup.
I will just say it's so important to me that we see this project move forward. I have been personally involved with this since 2008 or 9, when we actually started the initial Southbridge NEPA process. And, you know, I don't think we can understate the importance of this, especially if you look at the map that was put up by Emergency Services. When you look at the long one-way or dead end that we have coming down 4 Mile and 3 Mile, and it goes all the way to hit 27th Street Bridge. The thought of trying to evacuate West Glenwood, South Glenwood and the 4 Mile corridor and the 3 Mile corridor without having Southbridge in place to split that traffic up, trying to move everything to 27th Street Bridge. And as Terry just stated, we can't predict where that fire will originate. So which part of that roadway that it could impact and cut people off. So I think this project is so important. I know the money is a huge issue, but we have big partners. We have CDOT as a partner, RAFTA as a partner in this. Garfield County needs to step up and be a partner in this and protect their citizens up in the 4 Mile and 3 Mile areas. And I'm confident that they will do that, but we need to get this project to 100% design over the finish line. And I'm in support of doing the value engineering that we can to keep the costs in check as we can do that. So good luck with that. I hope we have success on the grant. If not, I think we keep trying until we can get this done. Thanks.
Counselor Zelinski.
Thank you. So I have a question. And a lot of this is just because I am a newer council member, so I don't have the same history that some of my fellow council people do. That said, I look at that evacuation map, and one of the things that caught my eye is that there is another way out of South Glenwood through that gate that remains permanently closed. And I'm curious if there has been any attempt to get emergency access through that gate in the interim while we wait to get this done.
Yeah, I think it was actually identified on that map. That was the long blue line you saw going down farther was the Prim Ranch Road, and it is.
Was it? I didn't think that it
Yeah,
was.
no, it's
That's
actually been
4 Mile.
identified,
Okay.
and so there's a
Yeah.
Knox box on it to
Okay.
open it. The difficulty with the Prim Ranch Road is that one person does something stupid and, you know.
Yeah.
I totally get that, but I just think that that is worth noting, that is not, I mean, you know, we're not being like incredibly irresponsible by like trapping a ton of people in South
Yeah.
Glenwood and not having that. So that's reassuring to know. I didn't realize that that was the case. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to just pop in for a second and say that, you know, many of you know, I sell real estate in addition to being the mayor. And I know that when people purchase a home, they always do a home inspection, or they should. The idea being is that we need to be mindful of what we're investing in, and making sure that it's a good financial investment for our community. I think that if we're collaborating with others financially, we also need to be held accountable that the design is fiscally responsible. So I think this move, hopefully they can find more than 100,000 in value laden engineering, so that it balances out. That's what I'm optimistic about. But I will be supportive of this motion.
The other thing I was gonna say before you guys vote, I think it's actually for the advocacy that the mayor and mayor pro tem are gonna be doing in about a week.
Absolutely.
Being able to say, you know, yes, costs have gone up, but we're taking these additional steps to try to control costs, value engineer, do all of those things. I think that's an important component for them to be able to speak to with our electeds and DOT and all of those. So thank you.
And I think, you know, so often we say this is a Glenwood project, but if you spend one day in Glenwood and ask everyone where they originated that morning, the reality is that Glenwood, there is a lot of people who come into our community. Well, 78% of our workers currently come into our community. Something devastating like a fire or an emergency in this community would impact this entire valley. So this is a valley-wide issue and project, and this is something that we can continue to work on until we have success. So thank you so much. There's a motion on the table, and we'll go ahead and call the question.
It passes. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we are moving on to, I think Carl Hanlon, our legal counsel, is going to do an overview. This is the Strategic Growth Executive Order from Governor Polis. This is about 2 weeks old. Is that right?
Yeah, it is about 2 weeks old. Thank you, Mayor. There's not a lot. I mean, this is in big picture, it is an internally facing document by the governor giving direction to his department and his staff. After what we experienced in the last legislative session, we know that, this is not just inwardly facing and it is outwardly facing as well. I think, I've had some time to think about this. I've done small presentations like this to a number of councils. And I want to commend the governor and his senior staff for taking this step, because I think it both acknowledges where we've been a little bit, but also more importantly, acknowledges that there are a lot of us out here on the Front Range in the mountains that have done a lot of hard work on housing, on workforce housing, affordable housing, and that all of the solutions don't necessarily happen under the dome, and that a lot of those solutions happen out here. And I'd like to just, I'm going to read from kind of the preamble, a couple of sentences that I think are really incredibly important to kind of set the stage on this. And this is from the executive order. Working hand in hand with communities in the legislature, we can secure a Colorado that is livable, sustainable, and affordable. Neither the state nor local governments should be a barrier to housing development, and state programs must support and align with the state's strategic growth goals. We can learn from the work already being done by local governments, nonprofits, the private sector, and other organizations throughout the state, and should incentivize and encourage best practices taken from different regions to better inform the state's strategic growth. And if I had to summarize where CAST ended up last year, that would pretty much be what we were pushing at the end of the legislative session as to how the approach that we would have liked to have seen and how we should move forward. I do think it's important as we kind of look through, I'm going to jump to the strategic growth goals for Colorado. And I think it's important to look at those from a council perspective to understand where the governor's coming from, because these goals are going to inform the legislation he's going to be pushing, and I think you're going to see pushed in the legislature. So I think it's great that where these are at now, we're talking about water, we're talking about sprawl, ag, transit. We're looking at it holistically, and I think that's incredibly important. And there again, I want to commend the governor and the governor's office for really being thoughtful about that. I do think that the last one, Jay, is of import to us up here in the mountains, which is, it reads, consider the context of different regions and communities across the state, empower and promote local initiatives and ideas that lead to strategic growth, and recognize that all communities have unique needs that often call for additional flexibility when applying strategic growth goals, especially rural and rural resort communities and communities vulnerable to displacement. And there again, I think it's a great acknowledgement that there is a lot of variety out here. And it's not just us in the rural resorts where we have a little bit more money, but there are a lot of communities. I mean, I represent the town of Rico, which has a few hundred people. It is, it is facing a lot of challenges and a lot of growth pressure, frankly, from the Telluride area. Yeah. And they are just not, they have 4 employees. The town manager drives the plow. So, I mean, it is, that's very different than us grappling with things where we have a sophisticated and kind of rock star senior staff to deal with it, the resources to hire an S2 to get us money. There are a lot of communities out there that are in a much different place than we are. And so I think it's great that acknowledging that in the executive order. Really what it does is it directs the core agencies, what he describes or what is described, what is his language, relevant agencies, including Office of Economic Development, DNR, CDPHE, essentially all of his cabinet officials, to examine internally what they can do to support us out here, and to report to him by December 15th what those programs and policies are, how they're working, what could be done better. And one that I think is really important that we have run into, and in part because they're, I think, a little overloaded with work, is directing Department of Local Affairs and Department of Housing to expedite the speed at which they issue grant contracts and deliver money. And the goal in there is it ratchets down to where that, the goal that he has laid out is that ultimately it would be within 30 days. And so that, when we're looking at land banking, for instance, when you have a parcel that you're trying to snag in a competitive market, it's important that that money come out quickly. So those are the kinds of things that are trying to be achieved by this. I do think it's going to set the stage for the legislative session. I will tell you as a follow-up to that, I have spent a fair amount of time today. I was on call working on proposed legislation around sort of tax measures and revenue streams that might be available and what we might propose to the legislature on that front. We have other teams that are looking at regional housing authorities and what might be proposed in legislation there, as well as just some larger, kind of big picture issues about how do we regulate or how do we incentivize? So I think a lot of great work is being done. And there again, I want to, commend your CAST representative, Jonathan, also the chair of the board right now, right? CAST did a great job in the last session. I think carried it forward and really has driven a lot of the conversation, which is fantastic. And so that's something that you guys supported, your CAST, your CAST as a group supported. And I have to thank the staff here because I ask them for like random information all the time. And they're like, really, Hanlon? But they always get it to me. They get it to me quickly. And so I really appreciate that as well. Hannah and her department in particular, and Steve telling me I'm nuts when I'm asking finance questions about how you make a project work. So with all of that, lots of rambling. I think it's a good thing. It's a great start. I think the next step for a lot of us are we're in the phase of maybe drafting some proposed legislative language. I think that's going to come back to you guys to take a look at, as well as starting to have those discussions with our elected representatives in the House and in the Senate and see what we can get on the table this year that can actually make a real difference.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. Bring it back to council. Does anybody have any questions about this? Like how it will impact our community? Any questions like that? Councilor Cap.
Question, Carl. Is there any work on the like the litigation field that keeps condominiums and townhomes from being built?
Yeah, and actually it's not the litigation field.
And- or
Interesting,
that-
interesting thing about that. So there is.
Mhm.
I actually met with the state insurance commissioner about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
Okay,
to have that discussion, because one of the interesting things on that from a builder's risk insurance standpoint,
right.
the difference in the rates between doing condominiums and doing an apartment project, it's about 3.5% of project costs to do apartments. When you go to for sale townhomes or condominiums, it's 8 to 9% of project cost is committed to insurance.
Okay.
It has more to do, I mean, if you look at case numbers, tort reform has always been what the insurance industry points at as their profit margins go up.
Mhm.
There's really not that much more going on the litigation side, but trying to get companies back into the market and finding a way to incentivize that. And one of the ideas the insurance commissioner and I kicked around is, can you create a kind of a reinsurance pool like we did with healthcare just a couple of years ago? We have a model to do that. For community housing projects specifically. Let's pilot it there potentially, if we can create a revenue stream for it so that we can kind of reinsure those developers to come in to close that gap, or at least a portion of that gap, to make those kinds of projects that are for sale affordable again. So that's another area definitely working on.
Great.
So I have to say, I was really excited. I had a meeting with the chief of staff for the governor probably 2 months ago. Out of that, it has generated a number of these meetings that I feel like we're really getting some creative ideas going on. And kudos to the governor and chief of staff for some crazy attorney from the Western Slope, getting a lot of time with his cabinet officials to talk about how do we make this happen.
Nice. Thank you.
Good job, Carl.
Yep. Councilor Godus.
Just a few things that CAST has recommended, and I think Carl spoke to some of the subcommittees that are going on. And I don't know if that's the ones you're talking about working on. There's 5 strategies that CAST is advancing. One is a vacancy tax. So if you haven't heard about this, Google that and what it's done in Vancouver. It's pretty interesting. Number 2 is, and I won't go into it. If anybody has questions, I can talk about it later. 2 is assessment reclassification, short-term rentals and or vacant residential. So this would be assessing and treating short-term rentals that are business-like, not renting out a room, not, whatever. But if somebody buys it for a business, treating that like a hotel, at the 28% or the 3 times what the other ones. They've talked about it before, but that's one of the proposals. The third one is a short-term rental tax authority for statutory towns and counties. doesn't impact Glenwood so much, but that would be the ability to be very clear to allow statutory counties, or all the counties mostly are statutory, but there's some statutory municipalities to be able to regulate short-term rentals, like Home Rules does, which is, we've taken some pretty proactive steps. Revision to, the fourth one is revision to multi-jurisdictional housing authorities. Yeah, please do. I was like, wait,
Okay,
is that
so-
what?
So there's a statutory provision, and as to the first two are literally what I was on the phone today. We're in the phase of starting to draft legislation around both assessment category and vacancy tax. So there are multi-jurisdictional housing authorities that are permitted under the statute. They have some ability to ask tax questions, up to a 5 mil tax question to support housing. A lot of the language around that is pretty restrictive and archaic. And so cleaning that up so that they are more effective, and also allowing for a single jurisdiction housing authority, because there are some counties that for a variety of reasons just don't have an interest in participating in a multi-jurisdictional. So really making that, cleaning that up, making that more streamlined. And also there's some really funky language around when you can ask a tax question that essentially it's like Tabor heavy instead of Tabor light, if you will. So cleaning those up. And Eric Heil from Avon is kind of taking the lead on doing that one as far as the subcommittees go.
Yeah, and the last one is a real estate transfer tax. I think we, know the communities that have been able to get that grandfathered in prior to Tabor coming in 92. It produces I believe $12 million a year for the town of Avon. 12 million. So, such a missed opportunity. If you look over the last 30 years, that potential that it could have been, but no, there's never a better time. There's also some discussion. I think the better thing would be to have it be a real estate transfer tax, so communities can be able to vote on it, whether we do or not. But there's also a discussion about whether a real estate transfer fee could get around that and in a similar, if not as effective way. So these are all things that CAST and thank you to our council are working on, along with Avon, Crested Butte, a lot of other communities and resources. So that's kind of the lay of the land. And it might not be bad to maybe get Margaret Bowes in here to talk about it.
It probably wouldn't hurt. I know I just got scheduled by one of those other clients to be at, we're having a RET discussion and a RETA discussion after, I think it's like the October 20th CAST meeting in Vail.
Yes.
There's going to be a group of us to sit down and talk about that. And, from this, anyway, we should probably do a work session on some of these concepts because they're more than an evening update.
That would be great. I think we should go ahead and just plan on putting something on a work session specific to this, the ideas that are out there, what's resonating with our community, and go from there.
And can I suggest maybe we do it, because we probably are booked the next couple meetings at least, but I know several of us are going to the CAST/Mountain 2030 meeting in Vail.
Yeah.
And if you're able to come a day early and go to the CAST meeting, a lot of the stuff will be discussed at that meeting. So it might be a good opportunity to, at least the ones of us that are going, to jump off from that
into
the work
Yeah.
session.
Okay. Thank you.
From a
Perfect.
timings perspective anyway.
Perfect. Let's do this. I think we're wrapping up with that item. So before we do item number 14, I'm gonna go ahead and take a small break. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. Yeah, thank you. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Good. I like these. Okay. Okay, we are back in action. Let's let everybody sit down. Okay, now that we're, okay, perfect. We are back in action. It is time to do item number 14, which is appointment of acting city manager and process for selection of permanent manager. I'm gonna have Counselor Weimer shut the door so that it's nice and quiet. And then I'm gonna have our legal counsel do an overview, kind of where we're at, where we can go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So kind of first order of business that I'm gonna ask you guys to do tonight, I'm gonna talk about everything, but then I'm gonna circle back. The charter does require and expect that you will appoint an acting in the absence of a city manager. And so we're gonna need to take care of that tonight if we can. As far as where, kind of where we're at and where we can go, the charter does have an expectation within 120 days that you appoint a city manager. Obviously, the last time around, we went through that process and we missed the 120-day mark, but we had an acting manager in place. And more importantly, you guys were trying to, work through and find the right candidate for the community and for the organization. So really, I think at this point, you probably have three options as I see it. You can appoint an acting and then look to potentially go out for a search, maybe Q1 of 2024. I think the difficulty we have right now is that a lot of folks are, school year just started, holidays are coming up, budget season is on. You probably would have better luck in Q1 starting a search than right through the holidays. And I know we kind of went through that last year, and you recall maybe it was just a year ago, had some problems trying to schedule both you guys and candidates because it was kind of falling over the holiday period. And so with that in mind, I probably, if you're going to delay a little bit, I'd suggest moving into Q1. The second would be to appoint an acting and to immediately go out. We could bring on a search firm, whether KRW or somebody else, and immediately just try to get something posted up and go out immediately. The third option would be to appoint an acting and post internally, which is something we didn't formally do the last time, but I think it's an option that you might want to consider just as you have a talented staff and there may be some interest there, and that may be a direction you would want to go. In any case, regardless of what you do, and particularly if you post internally, the Open Meetings Act requires under 24/6/402 3.5 that you announce any finalists publicly, and then there has to be a 2-week period, 14 days before you can engage in negotiations or make an offer of employment. And so that just kind of sequences that. If you went out internally, if you had a candidate or candidates, you'd need to decide if you wanted to classify them as finalists. Once you did, we would publish those both on the website and probably just in the paper. It would get reported on in the paper. And then you'd need to wait 14 days before we engage in negotiations. When we go out externally, that usually just happens naturally because you can't do anything any faster than that anyway, right? From the time that we publish the names of finalists, get them here for interviews and all of that. So depending on what direction you guys want to go, I can provide you some timelines that I think would work, particularly for that internal posting. So that's kind of where we're at. So I'm going to circle back around. I'm actually going to make a recommendation on the acting, that we had a really effective acting manager for a number of months last year in Steve Boyd. I'd like to suggest that council appoint him the acting manager and check that box on the charter. And also, I think it's important, just as we deal with the outside world, to say that we do in fact have an acting manager in place.
Would make it very easy. I think historically I would go ahead and open it up for questions, but I think just for the sake of time, I think we'll just go ahead and you have made a recommendation. Does anybody look for a motion? Counselor Godus?
Yeah, I would motion that we accept the recommendation to appoint Steve Boyd as our interim manager. And additionally, as part of that motion, I would move that we have a 2-week internal application period where we accept candidates internally. So applications would be due by whatever, 8:30 on September 8:30, September 21st.
Could I suggest 5:30 PM on the 20th?
That's fine. Well, that wouldn't be 2 weeks.
That's 2 weeks. from today.
Yeah.
Be a date. The reason I suggest that is that I would like to be able to amass those applications and be able to talk to you guys about them on the 21st.
So we have to have 2 weeks to,
No, not 2 weeks to post it internally.
okay,
2 weeks to, once you decide if there's a finalist. You could post it internally. We normally post internally for 3 days.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Then let's do that. Let's post internally for 3 days.
Well, no, I would, I was giving you that by way of example. I would do it until the 20th.
Thank you. So we'll do it to the 20th.
Sorry.
You're very confusing. I am very hard to understand, apparently. We will, my motion is, let me start again.
Yeah.
Appoint Steve Boyd, interim city manager. Have a posting for internal candidates till 5 o'clock on September 20th. Period.
Is there a second? Oh,
I was going to second it, but feel
Oh.
free.
okay.
Well, say something.
Go ahead. There you go. Oh, whoops, I turned it on. Turn it on. Turn it back on.
You second.
I seconded it.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Counselor Godus and a second by Counselor Zelinski. The motion includes both the appointment of Steve Boyd as our interim and just shy of 2-week application period for internal candidates to apply for this position. Let's go ahead and call the question.
Are we having a new discussion?
We can absolutely, let's hold off then. Okay, let's hold off on that. Thank you. And questions, we'll start with some, Counselor Sector.
I just want to clarify based on what our attorney said, by approving this motion, we are appointing Steve Boyd interim and also taking option 3, precluding the other 2 options or not.
Not precluding the other 2
Yeah.
options. You could decide that you may have no candidates. B, you may have candidates that you don't feel qualify as finalists. And so you might not take any of those. And then at that point, I think at the next meeting, we decide if you were going to
We
go
are
back.
appointing an interim and taking a first step with
Right.
an internal search.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Godus.
Yeah, I just want.
Oops, there you go.
I just want to speak a little bit to, I think the importance of opening this up internally. I think that, we've had staff that have gone nearly a year and a half since our previous city manager resigned, and we had 2 searches. We had, Steve doing 2 jobs with very little support. We had an assistant city manager leave during that time. We had another city manager hired and separated after several months. It's been really tough on our staff, and I think we do a great service to our staff to give them the opportunity to see, you know what, there's this opportunity for advancement. There's this opportunity to lead this organization, and we might not get any applicants at all. But I think to take 13 days and just to see what that looks like as both a nod to our staff, but as an exercise in finding a great candidate internally is something that we absolutely should do as just a course up. It might not be where we end up. We might be going out to a nationwide search in round 3 again, but I sure would like to give an opportunity to our current staff.
Counselor Cow.
And I appreciate that, giving that opportunity. I think it's an important thing to do. I also think, though, that we have a very new council on a portion of our council here. And I think that it's important that we have an internal discussion about what we are looking for in a city manager, what we want for that position, what that position means to the organization. And so I'm not real clear on what was the timeline on the 2-week period. When does it start? When does it end?
It starts now and it ends at 5 o'clock on September 20th. For
Okay.
applications will be due from internal.
So that's, and then consideration period after that.
Yeah, and I think at that point, I think council can decide. I was gonna follow up after this motion with, what process would you like to follow from there on with how you review that application, how you address those questions that you raised.
Right.
It may be in the context of reviewing that those applications. So I was gonna have that kind of conversation after the motion, I guess, on what you guys need to go along with that as next steps.
Well, and part of what I would like to suggest, and I'd like to hear from other counselors if you're open to this, but having a conversation within council and perhaps with a consultant to define those things and define well what we're looking for in a city manager, what we want, what type of style we're looking for, what we expect out of that position, so that we have a good idea internally of what people are looking for. Because I haven't heard really from other city councilors on that issue. When we made this decision before, we had a different council, quite a bit different council.
We did,
So
and
I
as you
think-
recall, that the consultant KRW did individual interviews with the council at the time around those
did.
issues.
But even then, we didn't really have much of a discussion. So I think that would be worth a work session or two, and maybe with a consultant. RAFTA's working with a consultant right now on their kind of management structure, strengths and weaknesses, what they're looking for. And I'd be interested just to explore something like that, to have that discussion, just because we have gone over a year now without a city manager in that position. Thoughts?
Yeah, real.
Can I just call a point of order?
Okay.
I just want a point of order. There's a motion on the table that's really specific. I would love it if the mayor so chooses. Can we take a vote on the motion and then come back and talk about process afterwards? Just make it clean.
Yeah, I want to do this. I want to honor I'm
Yeah.
hearing that Councilor Count may not be on the same page as others. I want to always honor that. And the reality is that she's asking to hear perspectives on where people are with doing an internal search without having maybe the support of a consultant come in. I know there's a cost associated with a consultant coming in, but that's just associated sometimes with finding a new candidate for a position. I also want to point out that we have had that position. It hasn't been a year since that. We did have a city manager for 6 months of that or 5 months of that. And now we don't. And so that's why we're back at it. We're looking for someone who is a good fit. And I think that while there are some newer members, I certainly don't want to be, and I know you don't mean offense. I very much trust the skill set of this current council, both with their past experience in businesses, hiring and having staffing. And I feel very comfortable moving forward with their ability to hire someone internally. Yes, Counselor Dem, and then we're going to do Counselor Sackter. I want to make sure everyone has one opportunity, and then we will call the question. So Counselor Dem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Just real quick, I could get on board with what you want to do and actually have an internal discussion amongst us to see what we're looking for. I think that is important. I like that. But what my question is, I guess it's to you, Carl, can we still facilitate that after the 2 weeks, or is it too late?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got a couple of options here. I think, you could delay opening that internally until after the next meeting, and we could have that conversation. I don't think we're going to have a consultant on that soon. To have somebody, if you wanted to facilitate a conversation at the next council meeting, or the one following that, certainly you could do that. You could just, the thing that the charter tells me I need to get you guys to do is appoint an acting. After that, we have some flexibility in next steps. So
Okay.
it's your guys' call.
Thank you. So heard that. I'm not 100% sure I want to pay money for a consultant, to be quite honest with you. But I would definitely love to engage in a conversation to see what we all are looking for. I think that'd be fine. So I don't know if we can extend Council go to this timeline by just a little bit so we can have this discussion, or can we move forward with what the timeline we got and then talk after? Or is that horse in front of the cart, wrong way?
Yeah, I think that, the only thing about doing it after you accept internal applications, is that those people are just kind of hanging out there.
Okay, I hear you.
Yep.
I hear you. So
Okay.
maybe we should extend. That's all. I'm
Okay.
just leaving it open,
Yep.
but that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Schachter.
Well, as one of the new ones, although I've been on the periphery, we have 4 council members that have gone through 2 searches. It's hard for me to imagine that the new members and the old members are going to come up with greatly divergent criteria. So I'm not in favor of a council member, but I would be in favor whether it has to be done in executive session or public. I would be very comfortable, assuming we get an internal application, that on the 21st on the agenda, we talk about as a group without a consultant, what do we want? You know, maybe it's clarifying our concept of management versus leadership. But what do we want, and proceed not hastily, but intentionally on the 21st with an agenda item pending an application.
And so what I just heard is maybe an amendment to the motion that's on the table? Yeah, I know, but still, I'm asking if that's something you're receptive to. Okay, okay, so an emotion and then, okay. I'm gonna hold off because I'm gonna just hit everyone and then I will give you the last before we vote. Counselor Zelinski.
So I was just going to say, as one of those new council members, I can appreciate, wanting to hear from me. I think that's amazing, and thank you for that. I don't know if you still have a copy of your little survey or whatever it was that you filled out when you did that with the consultant, or, can you call that? But I would be really happy to take the time to fill that out and share that with everybody. I think that I would love to see what kind of energy is available from within. I think there's a lot of, I've been incredibly impressed getting to know our city staff and how much institutional knowledge is contained within these walls. And I think that it would behoove us just responsibly to recognize that and see what kind of interest is there before going outside. And I do like the idea of maybe saving some money on a consultant. Because you all have been through this process, I think that you can give Sumner and Mitchell and I guidance in what sort of things to kind of be aware of in that process. I've certainly hired people. I've fired people. It's never, I think you said it, you hire slowly and you fire quickly because you want to make sure that you are putting good leadership at the helm. And I think that that should be prioritized throughout this whole process.
Okay, great. Counselor Cal?
No.
Okay. So with that in mind, I am gonna now call the question. And this is just to before it goes out, this is to appoint Steve Boyd as interim to give a, 13-day application period for internal candidates, to add an agenda item to our next regularly scheduled meeting that we may discuss, and we will decide how that looks, whether it's during our regular meeting or at a work session or whatever nuances we decide, to discuss what everyone is looking for. Okay.
As a point of order, that actually isn't the motion because it stopped. It was never formally amended to the
Oh, I
additional.
thought you
agenda.
did.
No, he was trying to. but
Oh,
he couldn't.
sorry.
I never.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, yeah.
You just said.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that's what you need to do now. okay, what
Yes,
said.
I will accept the amendment. The amendment I would accept is not, I would prefer to be a work session,
Great.
not a regular agenda item
Perfect.
to the September 21st meeting where we discuss
Okay.
the candidates potentially and or qualifications.
And Aaron, will you amend your second?
I will happily amend this.
Okay. great. Mhm.
So as a question, we are going to continue to open this up to internal candidates starting tomorrow?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so my whole point on this was after listening to Councilor Culp,
Mhm.
and I agree with her input, is us coming together to essentially perhaps redefine a bit the position itself, right? And as we think about the process of putting a a job opening out there for people to respond to, what is that job description? What is it that we're looking for? What are the must-haves, nice-to-haves? What are the,
I can tell you the one we've
Yeah.
used since 2016.
well, and that's my question, is that
what we want.
is that what we want?
Right.
Right? And for us to move the goalposts in a way after people have applied, where ostensibly they have a cover letter and here's how I meet your qualifications and here's what I bring to the table. And then at a working session on the 21st, we change things a little bit. Oh, this is really what we're looking for. We might frustrate some candidates in that they're no longer applying for the same position because it's been rethought, it's been repositioned. And that's my only sort of contention here is that I don't want to open up the gates and say, you know, hey, all you amazing people, here's your opportunity. And then on the 21st, we define what the opportunity is. So that's a little bit of cart before the horse in my mind.
I'll let Counselor Schachter comment. And
Thanks.
then I'm gonna
Well,
let
two
Counselor
things. The job description,
Mhm.
Carl, with the many municipalities that you represent, is it fairly generic for a city manager?
It is, and actually the charter defines job description.
Okay.
The technical
So-
job description, which I was actually, after you finish this, I was gonna hand this out and say, just so we're all clear, this is the job description based on the charter that we will post internally.
So I'm a little less concerned about that, but what I am concerned about, and I want to make sure, Counselor Godus, I think you said something about in our workshop evaluating the candidate. I'd say, no, I think we don't want to do that in a workshop. We want to evaluate what we expect from a position in terms of our expectations, not anything specific to a candidate at that particular point.
And
And I think
historically,
that'll help.
we have done the candidate interview and or even discussion in an executive
Yeah.
session. So we'll need to discuss if that's
The-
appropriate as
Yeah,
well.
and
The
that's where I think-
purpose of the workshop
Yeah.
would be for us to agree that, yes, that's the description, but also here are the characteristics we're looking for in terms of manager or leadership, whatever it may be.
Great.
Which is a little bit after the cart.
Mm.
But not too much if it's a generic application.
Yeah, I think that works. And I think, you know, I mean, in a normal search kind of rhythm,
Mhm.
there would be some time between you get candidate resumes in and you review those, and, you know, these things can parallel,
Mhm.
frankly. And, you know, I don't see,
Mhm.
even if you decided you didn't need to do interviews and you were going to go with you had an internal candidate that met what you were looking for, and you made that announcement on the 21st, like, you're not going to be negotiating a contract until the second meeting in October, which is actually a week late because of that cast and
Mhm.
Mountain Communities meeting. So, you know, there is some time here without question.
Okay.
And so don't feel any pressure to rush necessarily. Like I said, from a job description, it's really driven by the charter. So I'm comfortable with that. I think really what you guys are talking about potentially on the next meeting is the style that you would like to see in a leader.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, if they meet, you know, the job description is always like the check the boxes.
Mhm.
Style and leadership are the thing that is really what is tough to, like, that's the nuance of hiring
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
we've all been through.
Great. Counselor Godus.
I think just Mitchell, to your comments, four of us spent a lot of time on the job description, the first round.
Mhm.
And I would say that all the time that we spent massaging and working with a consultant and working with each other and working with staff to revitalize that job description. And I'm not saying this as defensively, or we did so much work. I'm saying this as just context.
Yeah.
I would suggest that job description from what we were presented here was what Deborah's job description was when we hired her in 2016 to what that job description ended up being was like 4% different. And some of the differences were derived by things that have not changed significantly. Our strategic plan, which was put in place in that time, our comprehensive plan that got redone. So I think specifically any internal candidate, I think your comment is incredibly prescient for external candidates. I think for internal candidates that have, anybody who would be qualified has been with the city long enough to have gone through in a significant way our comp plan, the strategic plan, plans that will survive all of us and plans that will survive all the staff. So I think that, and in addition, the charter kind of lays it out. So as far as a job description for internal candidates, even if this new council decides to tweak a little bit and put a little bit more on climate, a little less on something else, I don't think it fundamentally changes anybody's desire to do the job as a city manager, would be my opinion. Because when we went back out the second time, the only thing we tweaked was a little bit of the salary, but we left everything else the same.
It
So
really was the same. Okay. Do you have one more question?
I'll just close it out.
Okay, great. Close it out.
Yeah, I'll just close this out. That I didn't know that. I guess I kind of assumed that we had a responsibility to create a job description, right? One that sort of reflected what it is that we were looking
Yeah.
for. I guess I should have known it was in the charter. but,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
like,
Yeah.
the basics are in the charter. What
Yeah.
you think of as a traditional job description, duties and things like that
Yeah.
are in the charter. And that's why I said, I think the art form of hiring for a council is finding that leadership and communication style that work for you and work for the community. And you can't write that into a job description.
Right. So,
You can.
so, and I do appreciate all the work that y'all did.
Yeah.
In the last round. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we will go ahead and call the question now.
It's a trend, unanimous, it passes.
Perfect. I should have actually asked Steve Boyd if he was willing to accept the position. I thought about that. Yeah. Yeah, totally. So with that in mind, Steve, would you please come back up front because you are now our acting city manager. Interim. What's that? Come on up. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, welcome back. And we really appreciate your willingness to step back into this role. Okay.
I've been looking forward to this all.
Okay. We are going to transition on to council comments. I can either start at one end and go to the other. Okay, go ahead. We'll start with Councilor Schechter.
I have nothing of great
Oops.
significance at this point.
Everybody turn on there you go. Thank you. Okay,
I
Councilor
have
Schechter.
nothing of significance at this point, other than I'm glad we have somebody sitting in that chair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Who was she referring to?
Okay. Counselor Cope.
I will ditto that. Thank you, Steve, for stepping up and filling that seat once again. Appreciate it. And I think that's all I have for now. Yep. Just
Great. You're gonna pass. Okay. Counselor Dunn.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, thank you all for great discussions and working together. I like it. Steve, thank you. And Madam Mayor and I have been chosen to go to Washington and ask for some money. If I would have known it's $50 million, I would have reconsidered, but hey, that's just a heavy load, no big deal.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can do. I will report back when we, on the 21st, I guess. And other than that, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Counselor Zelinski.
Yeah, I don't have a lot significant to add, but I just, want to I guess extend a big thank you to everybody that there was a lot of external work product that came into tonight's meeting as far as the reports and such and the grants that were put in. I think these are things that are a big priority for our community, and I just want to say thank you publicly for all the work that's been done.
Great, thank you. Counselor Godus.
I just want to recognize some old faces where I recognize Terry Parch. It was really great tonight seeing former Councilor Paula Stepp in a different role. It's fantastic seeing former counselor Steve Davis and the Jimmy Buffett maybe deadhead role. So thank you for joining us tonight as a member of the public, former counselor Davis. I'm encouraged by that. I also wanted to thank Cass, our reporter, for covering us so aptly and fairly over the last several years. Not that you're not going anywhere, but I did meet with Catherine Tomanovich, the new reporter, who said that you're going to be splitting duties. So I wanted to both welcome Catherine and not a goodbye, but a thank you for the work you have done with on behalf of the Post Independent.
Okay, great. Okay, I have a couple updates as well. I'm going to start with an ask. I am curious. I think our last meeting, we acquired a piece of land up by the hospital. It was kind of a discussion item. We talked to a lot of people brought it up. I want to insulate that property from never being subject to residential. So that we would not add it to any coffers of land that could be developed other than for the benefit of, either debris flow analysis or some other necessary engineering purpose. But it will not be used to build housing at any point. And that is something that either one, if there's receptivity to this evening to adding it, or two, if it's something that needs to be added to a council discussion point. But, we did not acquire it so that we could put land or put houses on it. And so I would like to just make sure that we tag it accordingly with zoning so that that's not allowed. Is that doable?
Yeah, I think we can do a couple of things. You haven't accepted a deed yet.
Okay.
We could request that the grantor include a deed restriction, restricting it to non-vertical development or something like that. We also can take a look at applying a zone district classification to it that takes it out of, that would require at least a rezoning to ever go back to residential. So I think we can take both of those steps to try to insulate it from future residential development.
Just, the rationale that was expressed is that it's not appropriate to put housing on, exactly. And yet I think that it's really, we need to maybe take our decisions just a step further and make sure that our decisions are in alignment with what the plan or the goal was, just so we can move forward on it. Councilor Godus wants to say something about that. So I can either do it as a future agenda item if there's enough discussion, or I can just call a question that we give direction to our legal counsel to address that. So do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's our land,
Mhm.
so we can do with it whatever we want. So if we don't want to build housing on it, we don't have to. I'm a little hesitant to be buying up properties and then tell future councils, this is what you can only do on them forever and ever. I don't think that feels fair to future councils. So I don't mind having a few further conversation about it. I think it's fine to talk about debris flow. I would like to have Ryan Gordon here to talk about that instead of the conversation, like maybe he said something to one counselor. So having a better understanding about that, because I'm not so certain that maybe a portion of it couldn't be appropriate for something, but if we deed restrict it, then that's telling every future council, sorry, the council that was in place in 2023 was smarter than every future council. And we own it, right? It's not like it's, we're going to sell it and it's going to be to some, private developer that we're worried about doing it. So I think as long as it's in the city council's hands, I think we just have to trust future city councils. So,
and I don't agree on that.
Okay.
I think my goal here is that is not why we agreed to take on the property. We agreed to take it on so that there was a buffer. The whole discussion was that it would be a buffer piece of land. We talked about the grade not being receptive. Had there been more value, someone besides us would have acquired it. I want to see if there's like a general consensus on council. I'm one of 7 voices. I'm going to go ahead and have Councilor Zelinski comment on this.
So I remember this came up before us twice on 2 separate occasions, and both times it was expressed by the city engineer and our public works director that that's not an appropriate place for development. I think that I'm confident, like not second guessing them. If a future council wants to do something, maybe there's like some evolution in engineering that would make it appropriate at that time, they can always rezone it.
So maybe, sorry,
Mhm.
just for a point of order.
Yeah.
Rezoning it is different than a deed restriction,
So
right?
Carl
Mhm, it
offered
is.
two different options.
So I'd be supportive of the rezoning, sorry, just for.
Okay,
I'm-
so if we zone it as non-residential,
No
it would
problem, no problem.
require a rezoning, which would require a public hearing, which would kind of prompt enough checks and balances that it would not, okay. I'm gonna just do a call the question. If everybody is receptive to changing this zoning or accept, once the property is accepted into the zoning map as non-residential. Let's go ahead and.
Does
call
that
the
also mean non-commercial?
non-commercial, non-residential, yeah, okay. Is that cool?
Yep.
Thank you, okay, thanks all. Okay, great, I appreciate that. Chief Darris sent us a great email that he has officially hired a new traffic officer. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks for your persistence. I think that's a great thing for the community. And I'm excited that people are going to start getting tickets.
Yeah, until it's you.
Till it's you. Till
I'm
it,
eating so much crow. I'm just gonna say that.
yeah, till it's Jonathan Godus on Midland. Okay,
What happened to not calling people out? The dais. Jeez.
can you, let's see, your light is, there it is. Go ahead.
Somewhat related to that, Chief and others, I strolling downtown, I met one of our new officers who relocated from Illinois. Was it John? Jamie, yes. He was thrilled to be here.
Mhm.
And I don't think he was stroking me necessarily, but felt so good to be in a community where the council supports public safety. And it was just feedback and it was just great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
the gentleman that has been selected for that traffic position.
Oh, that's
you're referring
perfect.
to.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I couldn't echo his sentiments anymore. That's one of the many things that Glenwood offers compared to places we've been, is that support that we didn't
Mhm.
find in other places that we've been throughout our lives. And I've said that many times, that the council and
Mhm.
the community at large really supports the police. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for keeping our community safe. We appreciate you. Counselor Cup, did you have one more thing? Your light is on. Here, I can turn you off. Not yet. I have one more thing and then we're gonna, yeah, I have 3 upcoming events. Tomorrow I'm at Rotary. So if anybody's Rotary member and wants to grill me on things that happened, tomorrow is your opportunity. At lunch.
I'm in that group, but
Mhm.
I'm actually headed out of town tomorrow.
Okay.
I will miss it, but enjoy the.
Thanks. Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Aaron and I are going to be at CMC. CMC hosts Garfield County Senior Lunches. We are going to be there on the 22nd of September. And I think it's chicken parmesan that day. So for those that want to join us, make sure that you do. And then on October 12th, Marco and I are going to be out at the Hill in West Glenwood. And it's, once again, it's a meet and greet. Hopefully we do some talking, but there's a lot more listening. So thank you guys so much. And there will be other upcoming community events. So with that, we will switch gears and head on over to our new acting interim city manager, Steve Boyd.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Okay. And our city attorney.
The only thing I would tell you is I'm gonna be on an airplane from like 9 to noon tomorrow. So I know I try to be fairly responsive, but
Mhm.
if I'm not, I'm on an airplane tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, great. I did not see any correspondence incoming, outgoing. Was that consistent with everyone else? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, how about the Big Springs one?
What's that?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, we got, I guess, yeah, sure. So we got an email a couple days ago from a gentleman from California, Big Springs. Was that right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Desert Hot Springs.
That's it.
Shoot, we sound like we don't know what we're talking
I
about.
know. It's my fault.
Yeah. Let me see. I'll just pull it up really quickly. And I think it's one of those things that we can do a little celebration. It's from Desert Hot Springs, out of Palm Springs. Let's see, Hot Springs, California. Eric Versero has been coming to the community for a long time. He also lives in a hot springs community in California. And he noted that over the years, from past visits to this visit, that there has been considerable work done, in particular to the downtown area, making it really welcoming for visitors, and just commended us on both the improvements we've made while also kind of celebrating that historical vernacular that exists, kind of celebrating the old and the new. And so we appreciate these sister cities of Hot Springs people coming to our community and just recognizing all the hard work. So
You mentioned an amazing transformation.
He did.
I think a great deal of credit goes to former Councilman Davis. Yeah, you.
yeah, the one that's listening in the back.
Oh, you missed it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. And it also goes to our department heads who have been here for that whole, and the DDA and the chamber and staff and past council members. And so thank you all so much, because it's through everyone's hard work that we can get letters like that. Have a great night. And we're gonna, let's see, I'm gonna just go ahead and adjourn. Yep. I have.